G'day, hi and welcome. Just a really short video. So if you're having impeller problems and you've replaced your impeller, which sucks up the water, now I'll just go over the diagram really quick just so you can see what it is. So the water comes in here, okay, or it might be a little bit different on your boat. It's all messy here. Try not to tear my page. It comes in here, floods up. Then this tube here is in here, right? And the water comes in from here, goes into there, and you can see there's two. I don't know if you can see it, but there's two channels. So you've got your intake here, you've got your exhaust here, and then what happens is this goes up into the engine, the cooling, and then it comes out your exhaust and goes out the back of the boat. And if your impeller is done, usually the blades are all completely melted away in shrapnel. And sometimes what happens is some of this stuff melts off and goes up into your clogs the head. So make sure when you before you replace the impeller that you take an air line and blow it make sure water's coming through. One thing I did, if you want to make sure water's coming through your system, is just put a garden hose on the back where the exhaust on the back of the boat and just flood it. And you'll see water dripping out right here. It'll just be dripping out right where it's supposed to, or right here. It'll just be where this plugs into the engine. It'll just drip out. And then you'll know that it's at least not clogged. Now, that said, if it's clogged, then you're going to have pull the engine and get the air line, and you might have to take a lot of things apart because it could be chunks of rubber in there. These impeller things are kind of an inherently bad design because it's just when it works well, but when it fails, it's catastrophic. But if you're something that you might want to do when you pull your boat out of the water every year is pull the lower sail drive off and check out this tube. So this is completely clogged. I don't know if you can see that. Completely clogged. If you look, you can kind of see inside how it's all clogged up. And no water's ever going to go through that. So I'm gonna clean that up, and maybe if I'm lucky, I'll try it with this impeller just to see if it works. But I'm gonna buy another impeller anyway, just to see if I can get water going through the system. Once I do that, the boat is back in service, ready to go. The way I did it with that boat is I basically, in a nutshell, I sailed it. Basically, I get out of the harbor. I had literally about 7 to 10 minutes or 11 minutes to get the boat out of the harbor before the engine would overheat. And I'm an engine. I've always understood how engines work and stuff like that. So I could hear just by the sound of it that I could get away with it, just kind of idle out. And once I'd get up to an area where I could put the sails up, I'd put the sails up and just sail. And I was good until one day I got stuck behind a boat that threw a prop, and then I had to shut it down. But and basically sail into my mooring or sail into the docks, basically a couple of 100 feet without an engine, without the sails up, just kind of coasting with it. Just enough inertia. It was like a Captain Ron moment. I had a whole bunch of people watching me. They're just like, the boat comes in so smooth. Like the guy's like, what's going on? I said, engine overheated. And I shut it down, right? So it's like, this guy's boat's going to end up drifting in there. But it's like, just don't even move the tiller more than that, right? And then just had enough speed from the end of the dock to just go like that. And just as I was getting to the dock, it's like, boom. I step off the dock, everybody starts clapping. I was like, whoa, that's a steady hand, that's a steady hand. Good sailing. But yeah, that was my problem. So basically probably 10 cents a tubing. This is really hard. I guess that's just hardened from the years or whatever. Or maybe it's a special type of tubing. I don't know. I'll have to research that because that doesn't seem like regular. It's obviously won't cavitate. It's hard as a rock. This is stainless. Maybe I use stainless on here. But just something that's so something to look into. So if you can see right there where it's clear and all that stuff that's stuck in there. So if you're not sucking up water, it might not necessarily be your impeller. Check out these lines to make that a yearly habit on, especially boats like that. Because it can ruin your entire season. It didn't ruin my season. I found, sometimes people would tow me out and I'd sail around and I'd just get a tow back in. Other times it was just like, okay, time it. You got 4 minutes. It took me 4 minutes to get in and out of the mooring or in and out of the dock. So I had 5 minutes to spare, so I'd just get out, shut it down, and it wouldn't get hot for 10 minutes. So if the impeller was done anyway, it wouldn't matter. Wouldn't do any damage. As you see, it didn't do any damage. Running it for very extremely short amounts of time, not enough to do any damage to anything. I know I'm not recommending that you do that because you can create a lot of damage. It's just I was willing to gamble with it. Dumb enough to come up with a plan, crazy enough to try it, and lucky enough to get away with it. That's about all I can tell you. But make sure, especially if you're new to boating and you replaced your impeller, don't neglect that, because even the guy like Doug I mentioned in a previous video, who was like a sailing guru. If you needed to know how to fix something on a boat, he was the guy. And even he probably overlooked it. I mean, I'm not trashing him. I'm just saying it's something I never thought of it up until a couple of days ago. Why is this not taking up water? And I started looking at it, and then I just started realizing, because you don't see it, right? Because it's all the way down in like that, so you don't see it in there. So you're suspecting this, you're suspecting the impeller, you're suspecting something down here, but then it's just like, well, this is just empty cavity. This is the real meat and potatoes of what's taking up the water. And when the water's coming the other, like in reverse direction from the exhaust, flooding up the canister and everything, and it all runs out of the engine, it's not the engine. So, and there's no, it's just plumbing basically. It's like the water goes in here, and there's like little veins through the entire system, and it comes out to here, and then it goes over to there, and then it ends up in the exhaust. Once it ends up in the exhaust, it cools the exhaust, and then floods up, and then goes out the back of the boat. But it all starts here. If this wasn't a problem, okay, and there's nothing in here, like this isn't all full of seaweed or anything. Like, I mean, you can look into it, and I don't know if you can see the light or not, but I can barely. But I could see the shines of light. There's some spider webs in there, but it wouldn't hurt to clean that out too. Maybe that's where some of the stuff came from. Now that said, you're best off to put things back together the way you took it apart until you can fix it. But basically, don't neglect this. So I'm going to leave it at that. There you go. Anybody having impeller problems, something you might not have thought of, learned by my experience. I found out the hard way. It's going to be a long time before my poor random goes back in the water, unless I sell it off. But if I get this working, trust me, my motivation to sell it is like zero. It's like, no, I got a completely fully functional boat here. 10 cents a tubing. But that's really hard tubing, though. That's not regular neoprene stuff, but maybe it's just hard because it's older, but it's not cracked or nothing. Probably salvageable. I just have to find a way to make sure that I clear it out. So, yeah, there you go. So I'm going to see if I can get that functioning, and I don't know when I'll put it back in the boat. Probably maybe this week, next week, whatever. I really want to run the system. Once it's running and I see water coming out the back, I'm going to do such a happy dance. Because, yeah, it's taken me all this time to figure it out. But it's something I didn't think of. You think of the obvious, the impeller, maybe there's something clogging in there. But I've already eliminated that there would be anything clogging the engine. Nothing clogging up to this point. This from here on is good. It was here. This is fine. It's here. That's your Achilles heel right there. I don't know how you could probably... Because if you put a mesh or something in there, it might make more of a problem than not. But I could see how seaweed and dirt and grime and everything gets sucked into here. I don't know what you could do to keep it from clogging again. Because every time it clogs, you basically you have to pull the boat out of the water, because if you were to dive down and take this off while it's underwater, if you lose a part, you'll never find it. Although it's only 4 bolts, it's still, it's just headaches you don't want, right? But if you can do it, fine. But yeah, there we go. I'm going to keep it short, and I'll leave it at that. There we go.